Ladies and gentlemen, tonight let us settle in for a tale from the old world, a tale from Greece, a tale that has traveled through centuries and been reshaped by poets, philosophers, and storytellers until it has become one of the most haunting and yet oddly comforting myths of all time. It is the story of Medusa, the woman whose very gaze could turn mortals into stone, a figure who has inspired fear, curiosity, and even pity. This is not a tale of great battles or grand adventures, though it contains both, but rather it is a tale to let the mind wander, to imagine those distant temples and forgotten seas, and perhaps, if you let the words wash over you, it will soothe you into calmness, like the sea's own lullaby. Once upon a time in the mythic world of Greece, where gods ruled from high upon Mount Olympus and heroes roamed the lands, there was born a maiden named Medusa. She was not always the monstrous figure that later stories would make her out to be. No, she began life as a mortal woman, a daughter of Perseus and Ceto, primordial beings of the sea. In the earliest tellings, she was not alone, for she had sisters known as the Gorgons, Steno and Euryale, immortal, terrifying, with claws and wings and serpents for hair. But unlike her sisters, Medusa was mortal, and in that mortal quality lay the seed of her tragedy. In the beginning, some say, Medusa was beautiful. Her hair flowed like a river of gold, her eyes shone with the brightness of the sun itself, and she was devoted as a priestess to the goddess Athena. She walked the marble halls of the temple with reverence, her feet quiet upon the stone, her heart filled with respect for the goddess of wisdom and war. Yet beauty in Greek myth was often a dangerous gift. To be beautiful was to attract the gaze of gods and men alike, and sometimes that gaze brought ruin rather than happiness. One day, the sea god Poseidon saw Medusa. He was struck by her beauty and overcome with desire. He pursued her, not caring for her vows to Athena, not caring for the sanctity of the temple. The myths diverge here. Some say she was seduced, some say she was assaulted, but all agree that Poseidon claimed her within the sacred temple of Athena. This act was an offense, not only against Medusa, but against Athena herself, for her temple had been desecrated. The goddess, stern and cold, turned her anger not upon her fellow god but upon the mortal woman who served her. Medusa was punished. Her golden hair was transformed into writhing serpents, her once beautiful face became so terrifying that any who looked upon her would be turned to stone. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, the goddess who was meant to be just, had cursed her faithful servant to a life of isolation and horror. Cast out, Medusa wandered the edges of the known world. Some say she dwelt in a cave at the edge of the ocean, where the waves crashed endlessly against the rocks. Others imagine her in dark forests, hidden away from mortals and gods alike. Wherever she went, she was alone, for any who dared look upon her face met a stony death. Imagine her solitude. Imagine the silence of nights spent by the sea, her only companions the hissing serpents upon her head. She was a symbol of fear, but also of loneliness. People avoided her, legends grew around her, and she became known not as a woman wronged, but as a monster. And so her story might have ended, forgotten in the shadows of the world, had it not been for another figure of Greek myth, the hero Perseus. Perseus was the son of Zeus, king of the gods, and Danae, a mortal woman. Like all heroes, his life was shaped by the whims of gods and kings. One day, King Polydectes, who ruled the island where Perseus and his mother lived, desired Danae but knew that Perseus stood in his way. So, Polydectes devised a cruel plan. He commanded Perseus to bring him a gift, something seemingly impossible, something no man had dared attempt. That gift was the head of Medusa. It was a challenge designed to rid him of Perseus once and for all. But the gods often favor their children, and Perseus, being a son of Zeus, was not left unaided. Hermes, the swift messenger, came to him with a gleaming sword that could cut through even the scales of a Gorgon. Athena herself, perhaps out of guilt for what had been done to Medusa, gave him a polished bronze shield, shining like a mirror. With these gifts, and with a cloak of invisibility borrowed from Hades and winged sandals to carry him through the air, Perseus set out upon his dangerous journey. The journey itself was long, filled with trials, for Perseus first had to find the Gorgons' lair. He sought out the Graeae, three ancient sisters who shared a single eye and a single tooth between them. They alone knew the way. By cunning, Perseus stole their eye and held it ransom until they revealed the secret path. Then, at last, he came to the dwelling place of Medusa and her immortal sisters. There she lay, Medusa, not rampaging, not attacking, but sleeping. The serpents upon her head writhed and hissed even in slumber, but her body was still. Her face, had one dared to look directly at it, would have been deadly, but Perseus was clever. He remembered the gift of Athena, the mirror-like shield, and he used it to see her reflection without gazing into her eyes. Step by careful step, he approached, the sound of his winged sandals lost in the crashing of the sea against the cliffs. With one swift strike of Hermes' sword, he severed her head. From her neck sprang two beings, for Medusa, even cursed, carried within her the children of Poseidon. The winged horse Pegasus flew forth, white and shining, lifting into the air. Alongside him came Chrysaor, a warrior or a giant, depending on the telling. Thus, even in death, Medusa gave birth to wonders. Perseus placed her head within a special bag, careful never to gaze upon it directly. He fled, pursued by her immortal sisters who cried out in rage. Yet with the cloak of invisibility and the swiftness of his sandals, he escaped them. He carried the head back with him across seas and lands, and it became both weapon and protection. For even severed, Medusa's head retained its terrible power. Any enemy who looked upon it was instantly turned to stone. In his adventures, Perseus used the head to rescue Andromeda, a princess chained to a rock as sacrifice to a sea monster. He revealed the head and turned the creature to stone. He used it against his enemies, including the cruel king who had sent him on the mission in the first place. At last, when his journeys were done, he returned the head to Athena, who placed it upon her shield, the mighty Aegis, where it served as a symbol of protection and terror. But what of Medusa? What of the woman behind the monster? Her story, like many Greek myths, is one of transformation, not merely from beauty to monstrosity, but from victim to symbol. She became a guardian figure, her image carved upon shields and temples, meant to ward off evil. Some saw her as a monster, others as a misunderstood being, cursed not by her own actions but by the whims of gods. In the silence of myth, her voice is rarely heard, yet her image remains one of the most enduring in all of Greek storytelling. If you think about it, there is something deeply calming in the tale of Medusa. It moves slowly, like the waves against a cliff, a story of inevitability. She begins as a mortal woman, she suffers injustice, she is transformed, she is isolated, and at last she meets her end at the hands of a hero. Yet from her end come new beginnings, Pegasus flying into the sky, Perseus triumphing in his adventures, and Athena's shield gaining its most fearsome emblem. It is a cycle, as so many myths are, where tragedy leads to creation, and where endings give way to legacies. And so, as the story comes to rest, picture her not as a monster lurking in shadows, but as a figure of stillness. Imagine the quiet cave by the sea, the sound of wind and water, the serpents shifting softly like the rustle of leaves. Imagine her gaze, not as something to fear, but as something eternal, unchanging, like stone itself. For myths are not always meant to frighten us, sometimes they are meant to remind us of the enduring, the inevitable, the things that last beyond fleeting moments. And now, as we close the story of Medusa, let the image of her fade gently into the background of your mind, like the last ripple of a wave upon the shore. Let it settle, calm and quiet, as you drift deeper into rest. For in the end, even monsters in myths find peace, and perhaps in hearing their tales, so do we.